David Wilson does an exceptional job covering several sports for the Miami Herald. He is Mr. Versatility, baby, but he does cover the Canes a lot. You can follow him on Twitter like I and many others do at DB Wilson too. David, how you doing this morning, my friend? You doing all right?
Yeah, pretty good. How about you guys?
Very good. Can't complain. You know, David, today I called this a coach's game because there are no excuses. Your team better be ready. You've got the better talent. You need to win this game. You've got a 3-game losing streak. You need to go out there and get it done. There can't be, oh, we weren't ready for this. Oh, we were surprised by this. Oh, this, that. This is the kind of game that you've got to show people that you can beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And this is one of them. And if you lose this game, I'm not saying, any indictment on the coaching staff or whatever, but it's going to be a terrible look for you overall as a staff. And that's something that you're going to have to explain. Would you agree or disagree with me on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the. I think like a lot of people. Well, first of all, I'll say the biggest issue I think Miami has had these last couple of 20 years is the constant churn of coaches, right? That lack of patience, a lot of times been warranted. I mean, we've seen a lot of coaches come in and not been good, but just that general lack of continuity, I think, contributes to a lot of the cultural issues. Like you said, got to be ready to play. Mario Cristobal is coaching guys who not just were recruited by his predecessor, but some of them were recruited by the guy who was here before Manny Diaz. Like they've got 3 different coaching staff players, but so you can talk about patience, all that, but eventually they got to win some games. And this is, on our podcast this week, the Eye on the U that I do with Susan Miller-Degnan every week, we talk about this is the stretch where it comes up 3 winnable games in a row here. I think some positive signs in that North Carolina game. A lot of Miami teams would have fallen apart after a loss to Middle Tennessee. They bounced back, played one of their best. You guys were talking about just now, defended North Carolina as well as anyone has all year, especially if you throw out the one long touchdown, and got back to stuff that worked on offense. I think they're trending back in the right direction. Obviously, a loss to North Carolina in a game that probably shoulda, coulda won is not ideal, but they're trending back in the right direction when it could have gotten really dark after the Middle Tennessee game. But you got to now turn it into results. Like no one cares that you looked okay last week if you then come out and lose to Virginia Tech this week.
David, thanks for joining us. I wanted to ask you how you took this comment by Coach Gaddis. I believe it was after, it was after the UNC game. He was talking about balance in the offensive passing game. I'm sorry, in the offensive play calling. He said we threw the ball way too much, and I think a lot of fans took that as, "What are you talking about?" or whatever. I don't think he meant that. I think that was taken out of context because even Mario wants to be balanced. How did you take that? What do you think he meant by that? And can you talk about how important Miami's balance is to the production of the offense?
Yeah, I saw. I was out of town over the weekend at a wedding, so I didn't get back until a couple of days into the week. But I saw obviously people freaking out about that quote on Twitter. I get what he means, and you can the reason Miami wants to have this balance is because Mario Cristobal wants to have this balance, right? Mario Cristobal got to pick the offensive coordinator. He picked Josh Gaddis, who last year at Michigan. Obviously won the Broyles Award and did it by running the ball a ton. They got to get back to that. The strangest thing I think of these last couple games is the total disappearance of the run game, where they ran for more than 5 yards per carry against Texas A&M, and coming out of that game, Texas A&M, other than Clemson, probably the best front they're going to play all year. I think I was like, all right, they found their identity. It might not be sexy anymore, right? Tyler Van Dyke might not be in the Heisman race because they're going to pound the ball like that. And obviously the last 2 games, they've just totally lost it. They got to get back to that because that's what they want to do. But at the same time, you got to play to your strengths, and your best player is your quarterback. And I'm kind of I'd say I'm more of a new school spread football guy in college football. I think it works. So it was up to me, you'd throw the ball 40 times in every game, kind of. But I mean, I get what the way, the path forward, what Miami wants to get to, their strengths down the road are going to be in the trenches, right? It's what Mario Cristobal recruits best. They want to start establishing that culture. But right now, like I said earlier, there's like 20 guys on this roster that Mario Cristobal recruited, right? Between the high school kids and the transfers they got in. Right now, they just don't have the personnel, I don't think, to pound the ball. But at the same time, you got to run for like 3 yards a carry at least, right? Like it's got to be better than it was, especially because they've been so bad in the red zone and in situational football. And you need to have that balance there. You become predictable.
For me, David, I got to say, I've been critical of Josh Gaddis because I thought quite frankly, I thought he did a piss poor job early on of understanding his talent. And he kind of square pegged it into a round hole. And he wanted to immediately become that power running team when that's not what they were from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And then, 2 games ago, he started to add the element of no huddle and speed things up for Van Dyke, because obviously Tyler was not comfortable in all of that. And you didn't notice that in the offseason. You didn't notice it in practices, all those kind of things. And then now, obviously, you saw last week, they completely unleashed the Kraken, and the kid now is much more comfortable. I thought, for me, Josh kind of slowed them down early on by not really defining what he had and catering the offense to what he had, which is what I like coaches to do. I don't like coaches to come in and say, this is my system and you're going to run it. No, well, dude, you didn't inherit the kind of players that are going to run your system. You better be a little bit more flexible. And to his credit, he's more flexible now. To the criticism, he wasn't flexible enough early on. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sums it up pretty well. And again, like I said, the strange thing is that it looked like they were going to have this power identity early in the year, and it disappeared against Middle Tennessee. Obviously disappeared against North Carolina. But yeah, I say it all the time. In Mario Cristobal's introductory press conference, he talked about one player. He named one specific player, and it was Tyler Van Dyke. Like, that's what this whole thing had to be built around. Again, down the road, yes, Miami is ideally going to have the personnel to run this kind of offense that Josh Gaddis and Mario Cristobal want to run. But at the same time, like, it'd be one thing if this was a total rebuilding year, right? And you just wanted to put your identity in, implement it, show the next recruiting classes, this is what we're going to do. You come to Miami, this is what it's going to look like. But, Miami came in, was a bowl team last year, was sneaky close to winning the Coastal Division. If a couple of things had broken differently, had this quarterback. This was not supposed to be a rebuilding. It was supposed to be a team that contends for the Coastal. Obviously a long way to go in that. But I think if they stick with what worked last year, elements of it, obviously it's going to be different. It's a different offensive coordinator. They should theoretically block better. They got a much more creative run game than they did last year, even if it's not yielding great results right now. But you got to play to those strengths. I think I did a story the other day, just kind of breaking down the snap counts, and you see Brashard Smith, who plays the slot, his snap count jumped from like 30 to 75 from the Middle Tennessee game to the North Carolina game. He's obviously your slot guy. That's just an indication of the adjustments that they're making here in the middle of the season.
Mike?
So as you were talking, thanks for the info. Talking about consistency and what Gaddis needs to do to cater to his strength. It's kind of hard to do that if you don't know who's going to be available. Availability is the best ability, right? And right now, looking at tweets from Adam Lichtenstein and Manny Navarro, Tyreek Stevenson seems to be in street clothes. Michael Redding seems to be in street clothes.
No Henry Parrish.
No Henry Parrish. So I mean, like you said, we thought we found an identity offensively, at least after the A&M game or the Southern Miss game. But when you're missing guys like this, I mean, thank God Thad is back. So it seems to be like Thad is going to get a lot of carries today. Rooster needs to fix these fumbling problems. You got Lucius Stanley behind him. But in terms of passing the ball, which Miami was successful last week, no Redding. You expect Kobe Young to get some reps, and maybe Brashard Smith is the other guy. And where's Melo been? He's the other guy. But again, just too many questions, not enough answers from Miami's offense. So what I think you need to do is stick with what works at this point. Mallory was hot. He had a big drop last week, but maybe going into the game offensively, that's kind of where you need to lean. to me, the game is won defensively today. You get to the quarterback with 4, which Miami leads the nation at 40%, and make Virginia Tech play from behind, because I don't think you're going to be able to catch up if they're down 2 touchdowns in the second quarter.
Yeah, the defense has honestly been stranger to me to talk about than the offense, because if you throw out, and you can't just do this because these are like 4 of the worst defensive plays anyone's made all year, but those 5, there was one against Middle Tennessee that didn't go for a touchdown. If you throw out this play, this defense has kind of been awesome. But it's obviously now it's 2 games in a row where they have given up at least 1 long touchdown. So yeah, I mean, I think this defense, there's a good defense, and I think there's a good offense sitting somewhere in this team. The offense, I think, has more question marks because of the wide receiver position, and the fact that this team just seemingly can't adjust when teams load the box in the run game. But I think particularly this defense, the cornerback play has been underwhelming, but I heard you guys talking about it before I came on. The ability they have to rush the passer with just 4 guys is really impressive. The depth they have up there is really good. And there's some stuff I think to like at linebacker, even if, Corey Flagg, his mistakes are ugly because he's not the greatest athlete and doesn't have the best size. But I think in the front 7, there's stuff to like. Obviously, the safeties are great. But yeah, I think if they can just, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point down the road here they have a game where they could totally win a game with defense, because I think they've shown, they've played kind of like 3/4 of a great game so far. It's just There's always a handful of inexplicable disasters.
The other good part is they have in their back pocket, they played at Kyle Field at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, they're not going to be rattled by this atmosphere today at all.
Even though it's homecoming, that's kind of something.
Well, they're not drunk enough right now.
There you go.
That's true. It's true. It makes a difference.
Yeah, dude. If it's 7:30 in Blacksburg, then they're all sauced up. But it's only 12:30. They've only had 1 or 2 drinks, so
we think.
We think. David, and by the way, we're talking with David Wilson, Miami Herald writer, covers the Canes and many other things too. Follow him on Twitter like I do at DB Wilson too. David, do you think that the secondary, as bad as it's been, did it start showing some signs of life for you in the second half against North Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can hold that offense to 6 points in the second half, 27 points is the fewest they've scored all year. Like I said, I love the safeties. I mean, James Williams obviously gets all the attention for good reason. He is a freak. There's really not another way to say it. But Cam Kinchins is, for a sophomore, he is, and you can see it last year as a freshman. He's football IQ is just really advanced. Obviously 3 interceptions so far this year. Not having Tyreek that's a blow. That's obviously your number 1 corner, your best guy. I think the cornerback, first of all, cornerback's really hard to play in college football. You're going to get burned. So obviously Miami's gotten burned too often. But yeah, I think the way that those safeties can just kind of mess shit up, and the way that I think the cornerback play is inconsistent, but there's tools there with all those guys. And then, as you guys talked about, it's all about really defending the pass starts up front. And if this team can get pressure on the quarterback, then that changes everything. But I mean, like I said, you throw out those plays, and you expect, those are defensive backs' fault, so it's hard to just throw it out. But other than that, this team's kind of been rock solid defensively.
All right, David, what's the prediction? What do you got going on today? Who do you think wins and why?
I think Miami wins. I think Tyler Van Dyke has another, not 500 yards big, but another big game. I think he's back pretty close to what we saw last year, where 300 yards was kind of the expectation for him on a week-to-week basis. And I think the defense, I guess we got to bank on them giving up 1 terrible touchdown, but otherwise, I think, this Virginia Tech team's not very good. They're a first-year coach too. They're having their own growing pains. And I think the fact that Miami played really well defensively in the second half gives me confidence in them. Now, the problem for Miami for decades and decades now has been the inability to sustain things from week to week. You think you figure something out, and the next week it's a weakness. But I think Mario Cristobal is, in terms of getting teams ready and, the midweek game planning, I think is a little bit stronger coach than some of the guys they've had recently. Obviously, we're still waiting to see it for sure. This will be a good test, though, I think. But I think I like Miami in this because I think they figured a lot out in that North Carolina game. Just got to score in the red zone.
I took God, yes. I took him.
Let your quarterback throw it there. He's your best player. Put it in his hands.
Yes, exactly. I took him over 46.5 total here. You like that? Yesterday, that was one of my picks. You like this game over 46.5?
Yeah, I think so. I think Miami, I'd be surprised, after they go for 20, they scored 24 last week. I'd be surprised if they don't go over 30, pretty much, as long as they look kind of similar to they did last week, right? If your quarterback throws for 500 yards, it's kind of shocking you only scored 24 points. So I think if they do that, and like I said, they're going to, based on what we've seen the last couple of weeks, they're going to bust at least once on defense. I think last week we all thought it was going to be a shootout, and it wasn't, so maybe we're way off here. But I think they figured a lot out on both sides of the ball last week, but you got to turn it into wins.
It's funny because 20 years ago, I would ask a writer about a gambling question, and they were like, no, they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Nowadays, everything has changed, dude. It's amazing.
College players are getting paid.
Yeah. It's just it's all changed. David, what are you working on over at the Herald, man? So folks can follow you and check you out, my friend.
I'm kind of all over the place like usual, especially this time of year. Hockey's back, so I've been on the Panthers beat a little bit. Was up in New York for their opener this week. So, it's that.
Kachuk is the real deal.
He lived up to the hype and then some, I thought, in that game. We'll see. They play at the same time as the Canes today, so I probably won't watch much of it. But, I thought their opener looked kind of better than I expected, too. And I had pretty high hopes for them, too.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot. They got an alpha in the locker room finally.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting, I think, to see that dynamic, because Barkov he's obviously the captain. Everyone loves him, but he's such a different personality than Matthew Tkachuk.
Right. He's not the personality that's going to get in the way of Tkachuk.
Right, exactly. It seems like they can coexist pretty well.
Exactly, because it's not his personality to be that guy that rattles cages and things like that. So I think he's going to love that, because he kind of wants to be the under the radar superstar, whereas Tkachuk wants to be the out in the front superstar. So I think that dynamic is perfect. Sadly, Hubie was a terrific player, but he had the same personality.
He and Barkov were very similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I loved it as we were walking out of the locker room after that game on Thursday. They always take the picture with the puck, like for a milestone, and Tkachuk was getting ready to do his for his first goal, and he was like, get Barkov in here. Like, I got to have the captain in here. So he still kind of defers and respects what they accomplished beforehand.
Yeah, it's like Butler and Bam.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
A lot like that. All right. Hey, David, thank you as always, my brother. And you do excellent work covering everything that you do. And by the way, tell them about the UM podcast. When does it drop every week? So
you can check out Eye on the U podcast. Just subscribe in the Herald Sports feed. We've got shows every day on all the different sports, plus the Greg Cody Show every Monday. UM podcast drops every Friday to recap the week of news and preview the Saturday game coming up. So check it out.
We are platform friendly here. David, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, my
Talk
friend.
to you guys later.
You got it. There you go. David Wilson, man, from the Miami Herald.
You want to know what, It's just weird with these Hurricanes. I don't know if it's a college football thing, and it may very well be because college football is unpredictable, but I think it was you alluded to, throwing for 500-something yards, and then he was like, well, when you throw for that, you're supposed to win the game. That's happened twice this year from Miami. Yeah. 27 first downs against Texas A&M, no touchdowns.
That's what we kept talking about. You can't be great between the 20s. You got to finish it off, dude. And that was the problem in that game. 27
first downs, no touchdowns. You throw for 497 with TVD, don't win the game. It's just – that's what I'm saying. I don't know what to expect. Yes, 30-20, Bitter, that's what his prediction was, but – it's just Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with this team.
Yeah.
You're expecting, okay, you had a nice second half defensively. It should continue trending, but you're going to Virginia Tech, a game you should win. You're going to Middle Tennessee State, a game you should win. Southern Miss, a game you should dominate. and it was the opposite. So I don't know. Don't ask me for a prediction, please.
Okay. All right. Well, let's give you some of the news. Tyreek Stevenson is in street clothes, not playing. Keyshawn Smith is dressed in drills. No Zion Williamson. No Justice Oluwasum. Did I pronounce
Nelson.
it right?
All of us shown.
What?
All of us shown.
Oluwashon. Okay.